welcome to Connected, episode 201. It is brought to you this week by our sponsors, Pingdom, Simple Contacts, and Timing. I'm your host, Stephen Hackett, and I'm joined this week by my friend and yours, Mr. Federico Viticci.
Hello, Stephen. How are you?
I'm good. Welcome back. You had a week off, but now you're back. And
yeah, I was on tour with JT,
Yeah.
He said, you should go back to podcasting. This dance thing is not really for you. I said, yeah, I guess I should go back to doing the show.
See, I thought the seniors were maybe doing like some sort of like reunion opening act type thing.
Why with the Spanish accent?
I think it'd be great.
Yeah, I thought, I actually thought about texting the guys again. But then again, we're living in different cities. Like, we're all over Italy at this point, and it would be impossible to do a reunion. Not even for, like, Christmas, I think, because we have families in different towns now, so it's become impossible. No more seniors. I'm sorry, Steven.
Seniors.
No more. No, the seniors are no more. Where do we know the whereabouts of our friend Michael?
He's on his honeymoon.
Mm-hmm. So
drinking fancy drinks.
So this time is very much alive. It's just not here.
Yes.
It's just not here.
It's not here.
Yeah, Michael.
He'll be back soon.
He'll be back in the future. In the meantime, Stephen, it's time for follow-up with very important follow-up about Macintosh computers of all topics.
This is where we are. This is where we are in the news cycle. New Macs are in follow-up because they happened basically exactly the wrong time for this show. So there are new MacBook Pros. Everyone's heard lots about them. 4-core, 13-inch, 6-core. 15-inch up to 32 gigs of RAM, 4 terabyte SSD, which is insane because it's like $3,200. But if you need it, I guess it's nice to have the option. So Federico, you have a MacBook Pro that you record on. Or is there a new MacBook Pro in your future or in the future of your household?
Oh, no. Not at all. I was talking about this with Sylvia. She's perfectly okay with her 2017. What's the second generation MacBook Pro with Touch Bar?
2017.
So 2017 MacBook Pro. And I'm totally fine with my 2015 MacBook Pro with the regular keyboard.
Has her keyboard failed her?
So she hasn't noticed anything so far, but she told me as soon as I notice something, we're going to the Apple Store, so that I can take advantage of the replacement program.
Yeah, well, you got some time.
Yeah, but no, the only Mac that is on my wish list, and we've talked about this, is a Mac Mini. And a friend of the show, Minchiko, says that new Mac Minis are coming, which I still find that hard to believe that is actually happening after 4 years. But as soon as there's a webpage on Apple.com with the refresh Mac Mini, that's going straight to my shopping bag because it actually does fit a shopping bag because it's a Mac Mini. So that's the only Mac in my near, I hope, future. Not a MacBook Pro.
It'd be nice. I mean, like I said, I've got two. Neither of them will run Mojave. My one at home is acting increasingly odd, especially around like power on, power off type stuff. So I'm just hoping that it holds it together. But I'm with you. If they refresh it, I'm going to replace at least my my home server entertainment center Mac Mini. So the MacBook Pro. So I have an iMac Pro as my primary machine. It's what's in my studio. So I'm talking to you on now. But I keep a MacBook Pro for travel or when I work outside of the office. And that has been a 15-inch 2015. Basically the same machine that you have, lots of people have. But I have ordered a quad-core 13-inch. I was on the fence for a while, but I spent some time with them in the Apple Store, and the keyboard definitely feels better. And really, I want to go back to a 13-inch, and the quad-core is why I had the 15 before. So I've got one on order, just the base model with the 512 SSD, and I will report back on how that goes.
There's an important piece of follow-up that I wanted to share with you and with our listeners, Stephen.
Okay.
For the past few weeks, I've been busy modernizing and renovating our insanely and unnecessarily huge balcony that we have for reasons that I don't want to disclose on the podcast. The way that our apartment is structured is the balcony is basically bigger than the apartment inside. And we cannot, of course, do any kind of serious work because we're renting. But we thought we can maybe take advantage of this space, which for a long time has been essentially where the dogs can run and play, because it's big enough for 2 dogs to run and play. But we can maybe try and make it a little more livable and more welcoming and more useful to be outside. So what we've done, in addition to some new furniture and clean up the space, I have a TV outside now. So one of our old televisions that we're not using anymore since we bought a 4K TV. So we had this unused television set that it's now outside on top of a sort of an IKEA movable cart thing.
And this thing is like, it's not enclosed, but it's like well covered. Like this TV is not out in the rain.
It's well covered. No, it's not. It's a covered balcony that, it doesn't rain there. And I mean, the weather in Rome is usually nice enough for not to have stuff outside and not be a problem. But this building especially is very well covered. And we thought, now that we have a TV, we can maybe, actually also, in addition to connecting like a Nintendo Switch to the TV, we should actually be able to watch TV. The problem is that we didn't have an antenna plug, like a wall antenna for over-the-air television, close enough to run a cable to the TV. So what I remembered is I have a box of unused electronics. And I remembered that the NVIDIA Shield was there because I was planning to sell.
Oh, how the mighty
I
have
was
fallen.
planning to sell the NVIDIA Shield. And basically by putting together unused stuff. So I took the NVIDIA Shield, ran the entire cycle of Android updates. And I remembered that I also had a TV tuner, an HD home run. So I bought on Amazon an antenna splitter, which is this thing that you put into the antenna plug in the wall, and it creates 2 antenna plugs instead of 1. And I connected a terrestrial antenna cable to the HD home run, and then I ran an Ethernet cable to the modem, and now using the Channels app, which you can find, I think it's Get Channels or channelsapp.com, something like that. Anyway, it's a really good looking solution to stream television to an iPhone, an iPad, an Apple TV. They have an Android app. So what I did is I installed channels on my iOS devices and on the NVIDIA Shield. So now I can watch live television, including HD television channels, outside without having an antenna cable, just by streaming on my local network, which is very cool. And the Channels app, it allows you to set favorites. It has a built-in guide that looks really nice. It actually looks better than the interface of the TV itself. So that was one thing we did. And of course I set up a U-light so that now that we have some fancy mood lighting in addition to the candles that we have, it's looking really nice. Then I did 2 more things, Steven. I bought a Sonos One speaker because we wanted to have music outside, because we invite friends over quite often, and we wanted to be able to have dinner outside or just chill outside, have some wine and have some music going on in the background. And I knew that I wanted to have an AirPlay 2 speaker because I just find that convenient to have access from Control Center, access from the music app. But of course I didn't want to buy another HomePod. So I thought, what's the cheapest way that I can have an AirPlay 2 speaker? And the answer was the Sonos One. Now, it's working fine. I can stream from my iPhone to the Sonos One using AirPlay 2. But I'm having some trouble actually using it as an AirPlay 2 device when you add it from using the Home app. So this is kind of confusing, but there's 2 ways that you can stream to an AirPlay 2 device. From Control Center, you can tap the checkbox at the very top of the list of devices, and you can stream audio directly from your iPhone or your iPad to a speaker. And that part is working just fine. Alternatively, what you can do is you can, in Control Center, they have those tiles that represent all of the separate AirPlay 2 devices that you have. You can tap to connect directly to a device. And so you can have separate audio between your iPhone and the speaker, so that you have one set of audio happening on the speaker and different audio happening on your phone. The problem is, I don't know what's wrong, but so the Sonos shows up in the list of devices, but when I tap on the little platter, it says unable to connect. And I don't know what I'm doing wrong. I tested with Wi-Fi, I tested with Ethernet, because there's another thing that I bought that I'm gonna share with you in a moment. It's not working. I was only able to find a couple of people online on the Sonos forum boards having the same problem. I tested on iOS 11. I tested on iOS 12. It's always saying unable to connect. All of my HomePods are fine. They're also AirPlay 2 devices. They're also connected to the same network. But the Sonos does not want to behave as an actual AirPlay 2 device when I connect, from the dedicated accessory widget from Control Center. I don't know why. I have no idea.
I'd be interested to hear from listeners if that's a thing. I don't know anyone else with the Sonos One that has had issues, but maybe it's iOS 12 beta thing. Have you tried with iOS 11?
Yeah, because I also, for review purposes, I had to buy a 6th generation iPod Touch.
What? Federico, come on.
I wanted to do some actual testing for the performance section of the review. We can talk about this in a minute. So, yeah, if you know what's going on with the Sonos and AirPlay 2, I can stream directly from the iPhone to the speaker just fine, but for example, I cannot ask Siri to say, hey, play some music in the balcony, because that part requires this different type of connection to be working. And even though I see it as a device, Siri gives me an error, and when I try to connect, it says unable to connect. So it must be something on my local network. I have no idea. Finally, I mentioned running an Ethernet cable from the Sonos One to modem, and that is because I finally have a mesh Wi-Fi system in our apartment.
Very nice.
I knew that I wanted to have a mesh system eventually, and after I had a bunch of research done for months, and I pulled the trigger and I bought the Netgear Orbi mesh configuration. We have one router and one satellite outside, and it's just it took a bit of troubleshooting and setup, because we have a modem from our ISP, and I needed to set up the Orbi as an access point, and the satellite was doing a software update initially, and it was not connecting, and I may have done a bunch of accidental resets because I thought that the satellite was not working. Turns out it was just updated its firmware. Thankfully, everything is fine, and now our entire apartment, including the huge area outside, is now fully covered in Wi-Fi. So it's pretty awesome.
You're just living it up over there.
Yeah, we figured we should actually try and make this space a little better, because we're probably gonna stay here for some more time, and so why not make it actually nicer and more inviting for people? And now we can actually have nice dinners outside. I still need to buy a new table, and I'm probably gonna set up a second U light at the other end of the balcony. But overall, I'm pretty happy with the result. It's a different type of project for me, because I usually don't do like stuff, this type of sort of do-it-yourself project. I don't do this stuff, but it's been fun.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's fun to set up a new space, or like rethink an existing space, and sort of what do we actually need? What do I want? It's a fun thing to do sometimes. So I'm glad it's worked out for you.
Yeah.
So last week, as we discussed on the show, was the 10th anniversary of the App Store. And Federico, I want to check in with you. Mac Stories did a ton of coverage. There's a link in the show notes to the tag, so you can kind of see all of the coverage all on one page. But were you happy with how that turned out?
Oh yeah, it was great. I I was really happy that that readers and developers really appreciated the idea of celebrating the App Store and just the idea of leaving something on my website for the next 10 years, so that in 2028 we'll be able to look back and have this entire series still on the site. And it was for us a success, financially speaking, in terms of audience response. So I was really happy to and just in general, I'm just glad that 10 years from now I will be able to look back and see what I did for the first decade of the App Store and maybe do something for the second decade.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm looking through this now. I really enjoyed all of it, but especially the last two pieces, the App Store at 10, the next decade, and then personal App Store stories. Kind of a different coverage, but I think it really played to y'all's strengths. And I really enjoyed it, and I appreciate you letting me be a part of it, which was cool. But good job, buddy. It really was something only you guys could do.
Thank you.
So we've got a bunch more to talk about, but I want to take a break and tell you about our first sponsor. This episode is brought to you by Pingdom. Pingdom is the company who offer uptime monitoring and web performance management. And you may be more familiar with Pingdom than you may think because they help keep your favorite sites online, things like BuzzFeed, Netflix, Relay FM. If you've used those sites recently and not run into any trouble, you may have Pingdom to thank. The deal is that websites are sophisticated and complicated. They have so many moving parts. You've got things like contact forms, e-commerce checkouts, logins, search boxes, all these different components. They really add up. And Pingdom lets you check the availability of all those discrete functions. It's not just about getting a message when your entire site goes down. They care that all the important interactions people have on your site are working, and they'll let you know if they aren't. And it's easy to get started. All Pingdom needs is the URL you want to monitor, and they take care of the rest. Go to pingdom.com/relayfm right now for a 14-day free trial with no credit card required. When you sign up, use the code CONNECTED at checkout to get a massive 30% off your first invoice. Our thanks to Pingdom for their support of this show and Relay FM. So I know you are in the trenches with your iOS 12 review, and I wanted to see how that was going.
All right. So as usual, every year I dedicate 2 weeks to intensive writing every day. And this process started on Saturday. So I think I'm in my, 4th, 5th day, and it's going pretty well, actually. So we talked about the fact when Michael was still with us, that I wanted to take a less technical and more personal approach to the review, for a couple of reasons. Because first of all, I didn't want to end up in the situation again where my review is a 60,000 word novel that talks about APIs and programming changes in the new version of iOS. And also because I know that I'm capable of doing that, but I don't necessarily enjoy talking about that kind of technical aspect of iOS. I've always preferred talking about the experience of using iOS and sharing personal thoughts about using iOS and what it means, what the new features mean, what they say about what's coming next and all of that. So I didn't want to have I didn't want to work on the kind of review that I've done for iOS 10 and iOS 11. I wanted to have something more friendly and personal and more concise, if possible. What I noticed in iOS 12 is that when every year before I actually start writing, I open the WWDC app and I go through all the sessions that I marked as favorites when I was at WWDC. And then I go through the list again of all the sessions and I add some more because maybe there's something that I missed and there's some video that I need to watch again. What I noticed this year is that besides shortcuts, for which the research I had already done, there wasn't much else that I needed to watch in terms of technical sessions. There was something, handful of sessions about notifications. There's still one about photography and the camera that I need to watch. But other than that, if I'm not taking the extreme hardcore technical approach to the review, there isn't much that I need to write about. I don't need to watch the what's new in in-app purchases section. I don't need to watch the what's new in iTunes Connect session. And in previous years, I would have done that because I wanted to know everything. This time, I want my review to be an actual review of what it's like to use iOS 12 and what iOS 12 means for whatever Apple may be doing next. And so I realized, I don't need to spend time watching all of these technical sessions. And so I decided that for the entire month of June and the first half of July, I would just use iOS 12 and take notes as I went. I had a bunch of thoughts and notes and comments as I was using my devices. And then I mentioned that I was considering changing my writing setup so that I could replicate my old workflows from editorial in Drafts 5. And after much experimentation and having to learn a bunch of JavaScript, I am writing the review in Drafts 5. So I set up a workspace for the review in Drafts. I recreated some of my, not all of them, but some of my editorial workflows as Drafts actions. So things like links and footnotes and, having multiple backups of the review occurring at the same time. You will be happy, Steven, to know that the review is being backed up in 4 different places.
I appreciate that.
So I recreated that in Drafts, and I also changed how I do research. So I'm still using a mind map. So that part of the setup is still unchanged, still a mind map in iThoughts. And as I write, I close the branch, the section of the review, and I add a little emoji check mark to indicate that it's done. So the more I write, the more I advance in the review, the more branches I close, and I feel happy about it. But this year, and I think I mentioned this on App Stories, and I wrote about it on Club Mac Stories last week or a couple of weeks ago, I am using Keep It. So Keep It, Steven, you've been a long time Mac user. You may be familiar with the app called Together, which was sort of an alternative to Evernote and Yojimbo. You remember Yojimbo?
I do, yeah.
So Together was an app in that style, sort of a something that you throw everything into, be it images or PDF documents or web links. And now it's called Keep It, and it's from Reinvented Software, and it's both on Mac and iOS. And the reason why I'm using Keep It instead of Devonthink, which is what I used to use before, is that it supports tagging in a more intuitive way, but most of all, it lets me create saved searches on iOS. So this allows me to tag all of my PDF documents or my screenshots or my web links that are about iOS 12 I can tag them with different topics. So my tagging structure is something like iOS 12 and then notifications, if it's a screenshot about notifications, or iOS 12 Siri, or iOS 12 and then shortcuts. All of these tags I can then use as a parameter to create a saved search. So, for example, I have a saved search that is iOS 12 shortcuts screenshots, and it's just images about shortcuts. But I also have a saved search that says iOS 12 shortcuts documentation, and it's just about technical docs for shortcuts. So, Devonthink on iOS, it supports saved searches that you create on the Mac, but you cannot create them directly on iOS. And of course, the more I can do stuff directly on iOS, the better it is for me. And generally speaking, I just prefer the way that Keep It looks on iOS, because it looks sort of like an Apple app. It looks like Notes or Mail. It's got this default look that I appreciate. So what I'm doing now is I'm transferring... I've been transferring the notes that I had in Keep It in iThoughts, giving it a bit of structure as I transfer these notes. Basically I have two-step note-taking process. I dump everything I can think about and keep it, and then I take those notes and I make them branches and nodes in a mind map. And then I put drafts and iThoughts side by side, and I just start writing. And I'm happy about the progress so far, because in 5 days, I've put in 10,000 words so far. And I'm at the point where I think, so tomorrow, I'm going to be approaching the halfway point of the review, I think. If I can, my goal this year is to try and stay between 30 and 35,000 words. I know that doing less than 30,000 words for my writing style and the kind of topics that I want to cover is going to be impossible. Still, if I can put together a review that I'm happy about and have it be half of what I've done for the past couple of years, I'm gonna be super happy about that. And by my mind map and by my notes, there's going to be 9 chapters, I think. And tomorrow I will be starting chapter 6. So, as you can imagine, shortcuts is going to be the bulk of the review. But also, I don't think it's going to be as bad as the iPad chapter from last year, because most of shortcuts I've already covered for the past 4 years when it was called workflow.
Right.
So I'm feeling pretty good about not writing, the new Dante novel instead of an iOS review. It's been a fun and different process this year.
No, I think that the changes you've talked about making, I think they make a lot of sense. Where you were the last couple of years obviously was a ton of work, and what it yielded was amazing, but probably too much for a lot of people. And I think the idea of focusing on the user experience of the thing and sort of brushing aside some of the under the covers type stuff, I think that's a wise move. And I think it makes it fit better with what you guys do on Mac Stories, the way that you approach other app reviews and other topics. You really focus on the experience that the user has and not necessarily, it's because this API does this. And not that you can't do that, not that you're not good at it, but I just think that was a little out of line with the rest of y'all's coverage.
Yeah, I think it's going to be better. As I mentioned, I want to sort of exercise this year while I still can, because iOS 12 is a relatively minor release compared to iOS 12, and especially compared to what's likely gonna happen next year. Mm-hmm. So I wanted to try and see if I can do it this year so that I can be ready next year, because I really don't want to go back to a place where there's a chapter of my review where I describe how the drag and drop API works, which I don't regret doing that. It's kind of like giving a presentation at a conference. I'm glad that I did it once because I know that I'm capable of doing it. I'm very likely not gonna do it again because it's not necessarily something that I enjoy or that is worth for me doing. I know that I can write about frameworks and I can write about APIs if I want to, but I think there's people who are better suited at doing that than me. And also, I think, honestly, if you just want to read about documentation, the Apple website is an excellent resource for that. And there's only so much you can build in terms of prose and in terms of, narrative around APIs and frameworks that is not actually writing a manual. So I very much prefer to have to draw conclusions and to have narratives throughout the review that are about the experience and the design and what Apple didn't do or what Apple did wrong, that kind of stuff. That's what I'm doing with this review. And for example, today, I was surprised that I was able to put in 3,000 words in just one day about the do not disturb and notifications and all of that stuff. And honestly, I think that, the writing in drafts, because it's so similar to what my editorial setup used to look like, I've always been faster and more efficient in editorial than, say, in Ulysses. I don't know if it's about the plain text markdown or if it's about the automation and the workflows, but I'm more. I can put words down on a page faster in drafts than anything else. I don't know why. Still, this is how it's going, and I'm gonna take a break from writing on Friday to sort of have a day off, and then I'm gonna have another full week of writing ahead of me. So until next Saturday or next Sunday, it will be all writing all day. But yeah, I'm feeling pretty positive about it.
Well, we can't let this go past without mentioning this iPod Touch you've purchased. What have you done?
No, I was hoping you forget about it. So, as I mentioned, there's a setup and performance section up front in the review. I really don't want to do benchmarks. Settings takes 1.2 seconds to open and 1.16 seconds to open on iOS 12. There's YouTubers that do that, and they have more test devices than me, and it's their job to make these videos. And also benchmarks, that kind of comparison, it's better in video than it is in text.
Yeah.
So I don't want to do those types of benchmarks, but also I wanted the section to be a little more informed than saying, yeah, it's great, it's fast, I'm using an iPhone 10 and it's awesome. I wanted to have some comparison material. So in addition to the iPad that I bought recently, I also bought a basic iPad. I mean, what's it called? The 5th generation? The 6th generation?
Yeah, 6th generation. Yeah, so you have one of those.
I have sixth generation everything. 6th generation iPads.
Just for testing?
No, the iPad is actually another discussion. The iPad it's basically a nightstand iPad for reading and watching video, because I don't want to have the iPad Pro in the bedroom with me.
Sure.
Because I know if the iPad Pro is in the bedroom, I'm going to be working late.
So what you have, to put it another way, is a daytime iPad and a nighttime iPad.
You could say that, because it's actually true. It's a nighttime iPad. It's a bedtime iPad. It sits there with Safari reading list and YouTube. It's nothing else. But I don't have Twitter on it. I don't have mail set up. I don't have my RSS set up. It's just Safari and books, and actually Comixology, because I'm reading a comic book, and YouTube. But that's about it. Still, it's running iOS 12, so I can run some tests on it. But then I thought I should also get a less powerful device to really see how iOS 12 works on it. And I didn't want to get an iPad mini 2, which I think is still supported. I'm not sure. I think it is. Maybe iPad mini 4. I'm not sure about the number. Anyway, I decided for an iPod Touch, because that felt like the least powerful device that I could get. Yeah. It's got an A8 CPU inside. And it's so tiny. It doesn't even have Touch ID. It's a terrible device, but it makes for a great testing device. So I'm gonna try and see how I can compare performance between iOS 11, which is running now on this iPod, and iOS 12, which I will install in a few days, without having to do the full, benchmark comparison. That, again, YouTubers do an excellent job at that type of video. I don't want to do that. But maybe just being able to have an informed opinion of, yes, I also ran iOS 12 on an iPad and an iPod Touch, in addition to an iPhone 10 and an iPad Pro, and here's what I found. That type of stuff.
The iPod Touch and the iPad Mini 4 are basically the same. Both have A8s. Both came out in 2015. The iPad Mini has more RAM, but they're both pretty old at this point. And I think another interesting reason in favor of the iPod Touch is you can use iOS 12 on the smallest screen size that is supported. And I think that's an interesting experience. Mm-hmm. I know sometimes on my wife's iPhone SE, some apps, some developers clearly just don't look for that anymore, and you'll see a button and a text label slammed into each other, or like weird overlap, because they just didn't bother to look at it in the simulator or on a real device. Yeah,
what I noticed today that I couldn't type on the software keyboard because my thumbs were hitting all the letters. It was just, such a tiny keyboard. Or that, for example, when you open Control Center on the iPod Touch, it basically takes over, the
whole screen.
It takes over the whole screen, whereas on the iPhone 10, it's a section of the screen, but on the iPod Touch, it's so small. It basically all buttons all the way from the top to the bottom.
Yeah. Hey, at one point probably on this show, we're talking about how that screen size felt big. Now look how far we've come.
Mm-hmm. Simon, what about your macOS review?
So I bought an iPod Touch now. I've got it mostly outlined. I'm kind of doing what you're doing and spending some time with the OS. I haven't started writing yet. I think the average length of my OS 10 reviews has been like 15 or 18,000 words, a lot shorter than what you're doing. The thing I'm kind of debating, I talked to Jason about this on Upgrade, is that I'm kind of debating between a full review and doing like a series of like articles, basically one like per the major feature. And I've really only because I already wrote the dark mode article, and that I don't know what to do with that when it comes time to the review. Like, do I just link out to it, or because like that article is the dark mode section for the review. And so that's, kind of given me thought about maybe some other ways I could tackle it this year. I mean, this will be like I think I've done every one since Mountain Lion, and I want to do something with it, but I'm just kind of debating, like, is a full-blown review the right thing to do? And part of that is like the business decision of it, that the 512 just like doesn't make much money, and a full review is a lot of time, and I just need to balance, like, do I want this to exist versus like what's the best use of my limited time? And so I don't really know what I'm going to do yet. I'm going to finish my sort of mind map of it and see if that helps me come to any decisions. So I'm going to do something. I just don't know if it'll be like the same thing I've always done.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And I think, having done the dark mode article already, I can see why you may be debating your approach, because you've already done that, and I've been in this situation in the past where I used to do like standalone iOS stories in June or July about specific features, and then I had these stories, and I was like, well, what am I gonna do for the review now? Because I already have this article. Do I want to rewrite it? Do I just want to copy and paste it into the review? So I definitely share the concern about sort of what strategy to apply.
Yeah, and really the sort of the next biggest chunk in Mojave is the Finder stuff, and I could see that being a really nice like standalone piece, like talking about all the stuff in Automator and how you can now expose them as Finder actions. And right now, if I had to choose, that's probably the route I'm going to go, is pick another 1, 2, or 3 like big features of the OS and write sort of deep dives into them like I did dark mode, and then sort of just kind of have those as like a collection of things, and that be my coverage. So, but we'll see. Part of it is looking through the reviews. I've done the same thing for a really long time, like even like the same order of things, like system requirements, big UI changes, big system changes, and then like miscellaneous items. And part of it is doing it every year. It's just kind of like I've just done it a lot, and maybe I'm just ready for a change. So we shall see. But dark mode is still pretty, so it's got that going for it. All right, so we got some more stuff to talk about. Emoji, Instapaper, more stuff. But I want to tell you about our second sponsor. This episode of Connected is brought to you by Simple Contacts. It's great when an app takes a tiresome task and makes it easy. Simple Contacts does this by being the easy way to renew your contact lens prescription. You'll be able to reorder your contacts from anywhere in just minutes. All you need to do is complete their online self-guided vision test. It takes less than 5 minutes, and you can do that wherever you are right now. No more doctor's offices, no more of those terrible waiting rooms. It's summer, and there are plenty of occasions you may need contacts on hand. Beach days, vacations, water slides, outdoor activities, weddings. So why not use Simple Contacts to stock up for the season? You can order your favorite contacts from their website or app. Simple Contacts offers all the lens brands you love with options for astigmatism, if you're like me, multifocal lenses, colored lenses, and more. You'll be able to order exactly what you need in the palm of your hand. The vision test is just $20. For comparison, an appointment without insurance could cost you over $200. Simple contacts can save you money and time. We do need to let you know this is not a replacement for your periodic full eye health exam. Simple Contacts will check that your current prescription still helps you see 20/20 and will renew your lenses based on that prescription. They're not writing a completely new prescription or examining your eye health. I use Simple Contacts. I needed some. I downloaded the app. I did the vision test. It was super fast and easy. You do it with your contacts in. And within a few days, I had my specific contacts delivered to my door. As a listener of this show, you can get $20 off your contact lens order. Just go to simplecontacts.com/connected20 or use the code connected20 at checkout. That's simplecontacts.com/connected20 or simply use the code connected20 for $20 off. We thank Simple Contacts for their support of this show and Relay FM. So, Federico, yesterday was World Emoji Day. Happy World Emoji Day, buddy.
Thanks. You too.
Yes. I didn't get you anything. Sorry.
It's all right. Don't worry about it. It's I forgive you, Steven.
Well, I got you a leg emoji. That's coming.
Okay.
This is a day kind of put together by Emojipedia and Jeremy Burrs and all the sort of crazy emoji kids to celebrate emoji and what they mean in society, but also now like companies like Apple use it to showcase the emoji they are bringing to their platform. So, of course, Unicode every year says these are the new emoji this year. For 2018, there's like 157 new emoji. That brings the total number to 2,823. Can you believe it's almost 3,000 emoji? That's crazy to me.
What? How many?
Almost 3,000. 2,823.
Oh, wow. This is considering all the combinations.
I assume so.
Yeah. And still no emoji search in the iOS keyboard.
Well, they're waiting to break 3,000 even, and then they'll do it. So this year, you talked about like customization. So now emojis can be set to have red hair, curly hair, which I appreciate. There's new emojis for superheroes, softball, kangaroo, the peacock, which I think is my favorite. There's a llama, a raccoon, a foot, very creepy leg. It's just like the most, like a cat, like a thigh and a calf and a foot. It's all very concerning, honestly. I don't really know what's going on there.
There's a kangaroo too, I think.
Yeah. There's a bunch of good stuff. And so Apple has previewed some of their artwork for these, and they'll be rolling out this fall. I think we can assume that it'll be with like iOS 12.1 or 12.2 or something. We've talked about this in the past, right? Where Apple puts emoji in a point update as like incentive for people to upgrade, right? So if you're not on the newest OS and I send you the pirate flag emoji, which is new this year, and your iPhone just going to give you a little box with a question mark in it, you'll be sad. And then you'll go to software update and say that, hey, I can see these emoji now. So it's a good thing. I think it makes sense the way they release them.
There should be a feature. Apple should do a feature in iMessage where if somebody sends you an emoji that is not supported, you will get an inline message that says, if only you updated your phone, you would see this emoji.
I think you described Clippy is what you've done. You've reinvented Clippy.
Try and shame you into updating. I'm available as a consultant for software update. What's it called? What's the correct name here, Steven? It's not engagement.
Nagging.
No. I'm thinking of a very specific word that tech companies use. So growth hacking.
Growth hacking.
That's what I'm thinking of.
Yeah.
I can be your software update
growth hacker.
Growth hacking consultant. That's my new title.
It's really good. I don't know if it fits on a business card. You may need to shorten it, but it's a good start.
Well, you can go on the back of the business card too. You can continue on the back. You can.
I don't know about you, but every year I think I don't know what else they could add to this. 2,800 emoji is a lot. Like, yes, there's animals that they've added, right? So, like the animals, there's a skunk, parrot, all the animals we mentioned earlier. There's a salt shaker. There's a mango. I guess the mango people were sad they didn't have a mango emoji.
Sure.
Do we just run out at some point? Like, at some point, are they just out of emoji? What do you think?
I guess that, yes, at some point there will be a scarcity of new emoji to add. But also, I could see, I could see emoji going in different directions, such as landmarks, for example. There could be a Colosseum emoji. There could be a Statue of Liberty emoji.
There is.
There is
a Statue of Liberty emoji.
Oh, there is already one? So there you go. You Americans,
USA,
you get all...
USA.
You're not... Stop acting like Casey.
I'm so sorry.
But I could see, more landmarks, except for the Statue of Liberty, which is already an emoji. Or, I don't know. I guess, there's still quite a few expressions to cover, in terms of human expressions. More symbols. Unless, I really don't think that the Unicode folks want to go with branded emoji. So
yeah,
that feels weird and it feels wrong to have advertisements in your Unicode.
Yeah. Well, you already see a little bit of that. So like the watch emoji, Apple renders on its platforms as an Apple Watch. Like that's already creeping in a little bit.
Yeah, kind of, because Apple can do, they can make the phone emoji look like an iPhone and the Apple Watch look, yeah.
Right.
But yeah, I think they, I don't think we'll always have this sort of aggressive schedule of like 150 or 200 new emoji every year. I think eventually we'll settle on something like 50 or 40. But also the world is changing and we're always coming up with new memes or new objects or new inventions. And I think we'll continue to come up with new emoji as well. So we really need emoji search though, because Apple seems to think that the predictive emoji system is fine. The problem is it's based on rules that are not explained. And sometimes I'm thinking of an emoji that, I think Google does an excellent job at this, that you can search for the same emoji using multiple search terms and different ways to describe it. Because, it's Google and they know what people search for. I really hope that Apple eventually adds a search bar to the emoji keyboard, and they could still use machine learning and differential privacy, whatever they want to use to power their system, but just let me manually search for a character to add to my conversations.
Yeah, and they have that on the Mac. Jeremy Bursch, spoke about him earlier, the founder of Emojipedia and all around.
He's the inventor of emoji.
He wrote this. He writes. He draws them all. He wrote this thing earlier this year that the Apple search is actually really bad on the Mac. And so we'll have that in the show notes as a reminder. But like, it seems like such an obvious thing to add. Like you said, Google does it. The Google keyboard does it. And like, just do it. And fix your search terms. It seems like in a world where there's less low-hanging fruit in new versions of iOS, this sure seems like an obvious one.
Yeah. What can you tell me about Instapaper? As a European user, all I know is that the service is gone because of GDPR.
Yeah, we'll get to that. But so a little history on Instapaper. Marco Arment, our friend, invented it and developed it, sold it to BetaWorks in 2013. BetaWorks sold it to Pinterest a couple of years ago, and really since then, from my perspective, and I've used Instapaper since like the day it was available on the iPhone. It's been in the same spot on my home screen for a decade. Under Pinterest Watch, it really didn't go anywhere, and that's not to say anything bad about the people working on it. I know a couple of them. They're great people and they're great developers and they're passionate about Instapaper, and they're the group who now own it. Where this ends up is that Pinterest has sold it to a group who were working on it since the BetaWorks days. And I am hopeful that this means that they can fix the GDPR compliance. So like when I was in England a couple weeks ago, I couldn't save anything to Instapaper. I couldn't access the website. Like it was like just like it didn't exist. And that was a bummer. Especially when you're on vacation, right? Like you see a link on Twitter real quick and you want to save it for later because you're on vacation. It's like, well, I have no place to put those. So I put them in Safari Reader, which I want to talk to you about. But I'm hopeful that this means that Instapaper will be able to move forward in features and updates. I have lots of questions, I think, as do you, as do other people, about what is the business model going to be. Inside Pinterest, it didn't matter if Instapaper made money or not because Pinterest is huge. Now, the downside was Pinterest basically ignored it. So
they did actually, under Pinterest Watch, they did actually remove the premium subscription. They just made everything free.
Yeah.
So I think that puts them in a tough spot because now they're gonna have, if they want to monetize, they're gonna have to bring back and sort of paywall features that are now free or come up with new premium features to have users pay. So I don't know what they're gonna do, but I've always liked Instapaper. Before I switched to Safari Reading List, I think Instapaper does or used to do an excellent job at making it easy for you to save stuff, of course, but also do some basic research with tools like highlighting, for example, or adding notes, or organizing articles in folders and archiving stuff for later, but still being able to search, for highlights. It was also a great iOS automation citizen. I think it was with Marco. It was one of the first apps, if not the first app, to support X callback URL on iOS.
Yeah, well, I mean, he and Greg worked on it, in those early days. Yeah, I mean, under Marco, it really was just a phenomenal app, and I remember Instapaper HD on the iPad, and that really seemed to be the moment.
It was called HD. You're right. I totally.
Do you remember every
that.
app used to do that? It was crazy.
Everyone used to do that, to call the apps HD.
Well, and you guys spoke about it on an episode of App Stories that he was on recently about sort of the background there, and it really was for such a long time a beacon of what an iOS app should be. And I'm hopeful that can return. But the difference is, like you said, now it's got competition in Pocket. It's got competition in Safari Reading List. So you've been using that. Tell me how that's gone for you, because I haven't really experimented with it except for when I was traveling.
It's okay. I love that it's so well integrated with the system. It's not another thing that I need to manage. That I like, that it's just an extension in the share sheet, and it's always there, and it's always in Safari, and it integrates directly with Safari Reader, which is one of the best features of Safari, the Reader mode.
Yes.
What I don't like is that it is unreliable, in the sense that often when I'm on a plane and I go like, oh, now I'm going to read some articles from my reading list. And for some obscure reason, one of them is not available for offline reading. Even though I have the option enabled and I'm always on Wi-Fi and I have decent Wi-Fi, I think. For some reason, some articles are not available for offline consumption. Also, it doesn't have full text search. So often I'm in a situation where I'm writing a review or I'm writing a story and I want to reference an article that I remember reading a while back. I cannot find, and maybe I remember a sentence or I remember a quote from that article. I cannot search for it into my reading list. I need to go on Google and search by site, and it doesn't have a search mode. It only searches the titles of the articles that you save, and also it doesn't have any folder-based organization or tagging system to begin with. So it's plain. It's right there in the name. It's a reading list. It's not meant to be a more complex tool such as Pocket or Instapaper. Still, I wish that Apple put a little more effort into making it something worthwhile. I cannot imagine that people don't want to read articles anymore. There must be at least a few million users who use Safari reading list, considering the scale of iOS. And so even though in the past I argued in favor of why don't they just make reading list a separate app on iOS, now I would be fine just with having some improvements or a better, more reliable syncing system and some kind of full text search. I would even be fine without folders and without tagging, even though those would be welcome. But really, search and more reliable downloads. That would be at the top of my list. But otherwise, it's fine. I miss Instapaper, but this is fine.
Yeah. I don't know. Safari reading list seems like one of those features that like Apple implemented and then it gets touched every 4 years, right?
Yeah.
You may be stuck waiting a little while for that thing to get, which is a bummer, right? That Apple should.
They should. You know what they should do? They should, to decide what product, what app they should work on next. They should get the teams from all these apps that are sort of, forgotten about. So people from the reminders team, people from the Safari reading list team, people from Apple Mail, battle it out in a sort of battle royale competition. And the last team standing wins and gets to work on updates for the next version of iOS. And everybody else goes back to their office for the next 4 years. Will be fun. Doesn't have to be violent. It could be a game of tag or something.
Yeah, I like that.
Still should be following the battle royale rules. So sort of like an internal Fortnite is what I'm asking for. I really want an updated reminders app.
Oh,
Steven.
come on, man! It's too long.
No, I know, right? It's been like 4 years and no updates. It's still got that look from iOS 7. I think it's the only app that from the iOS 7 generation that was never touched.
Yeah.
Again. And honestly, can you believe that nobody uses reminders? Everybody I know uses reminders. It's because it's right there.
It's shared with iCloud.
Exactly.
I mean, I use Todoist, but like shared grocery lists and like all sorts of stuff end up in there. Well, same thing with Notes. Notes isn't as bad of an example, but like, why is that texture still there? Why did my letters still like they're sunk into paper? Like, just in Mojave, the dark mode in Notes includes the same background. They just made it dark. It's like you had to go into the app bundle to make this. Why didn't you just get rid of it? It hurts.
Does dark paper even exist?
I don't know. Mike's not here. I don't know. Who knows? Who knows how paper works? So I mean, best of luck to the Instapaper team. I wish them success. I hope it's successful. I'm curious how they can pull it off. It's an uphill battle, but I feel like if anyone can do it, then it'll be them. So I'm in their corner, Federico. Is what I'm saying. In their corner. All right, we got a few more things to talk about, but I'm going to tell you about our final sponsor. This episode of Connected is brought to you by Timing, the automatic time tracking app for macOS. In today's fast-moving world, the next distraction is right around the corner. It's just a notification away, it feels like. That makes it harder and harder to stay on track with your projects and determine how much you actually worked. That's why you need an app to help you stay on top of your time. But manual time tracking can interrupt your workflow. Timing is different because Timing automates your time tracking to save you as much time as possible. First, it automatically tracks how you spend time on your Mac, broken down by app, website, and document. But that'd be a lot of data to work through, so Timing lets you use drag and drop to create rules that help automatically categorize your time. So for instance, if I'm in this document, I'm working. If I'm in this document, I'm writing poetry for Federico, which is not work. It will also suggest to fill gaps in your timeline, so you never forget to track a meeting or something like that. It can even automatically ask you what you did whenever you return to your Mac. And with a new automatic sync feature, your track time now magically appears across all your Macs. So if you go out with your MacBook, you get the full picture on your iMac when you get back home. Timing makes, like I said, all of this really easy. I tried manual time tracking and really struggled with it, but Timing just does it all automatically, and those reports make it really easy to see what I've actually been doing. Timing is so confident that you'll love their fuss-free approach. They offer a totally free trial. Download the free 14-day trial today by going to timingapp.com/connected, and you'll save 10% when you purchase the app. Timing, stop worrying about time and focus on doing your best work instead. We thank Timing for their support of this show and Relay FM. So let's talk about Nest, everyone's favorite, I don't know if everyone's favorite, but, company that makes thermostats and cameras. I have a ton of Nest stuff at home. I'm really kind of all in on their ecosystem. And that makes me worried sometimes because Nest has had a very rough couple of years since being acquired by Google. Google bought them for $3.2 billion in 2014. I remember at the time, $3.2 billion seemed like an insane amount of money, and now you see acquisitions going for even more than that. But they had a CEO that was kind of like, it seems like an operations guy, and employees basically complained to Google about him, and they sent him packing. As part of that, Nest is now being merged with Google's home and living room products team. I assume that means like the team that makes like the Google Home and the Chromecast and stuff, right? Like, is that how you read that, what that group may do?
Yeah, especially Google Home and Living Room. Why Living Room? I suppose it's because of the Chromecast and TV.
Well, you don't want to work on a team that's like the bedroom products team. That's a different.
Why not?
It's a different thing.
Would you have a Google's Home and Kitchen team? Would that be better?
Google has been part of Alphabet, sort of in parallel with Google. It's been brought back into Google. Now it's being sort of demoted inside a products team. They do say the Nest brand will continue on, so I don't think they're going to like rebrand the Nest thermostat like the Google thermostat. But it makes me worry, and I wonder what you think about it as in terms of consumer confidence. Like, do normal people, are they ever going to hear about this, or like they just see like the Nest brand in stores and they equate that with the thermostat that has a computer inside of it?
It depends on, I think, if they're keeping the Nest branding. Because what I notice is that when these big acquisitions happen, it always takes a while for people to sort of associate the brand with the new owner. There's still some of my friends only discovered recently that Instagram was owned by Facebook. And most of my friends do not know that Beats is owned by Apple, for context.
Yeah.
So...
Well, they've said they're keeping it, so I guess.
So, yeah, I think honestly that most people will not care, and they will see the Nest brand. They will say, oh yeah, that's they make the thermostat and the sensors that I know. I trust that company, and then I suppose there will be some kind of badge that says works with the Google Assistant. So maybe they will make the association there because they see the Google logo on the box, but I don't know. Most people do not keep up with this sort of tech news, that you see on TechCrunch about acquisitions and mergers. They don't care. They don't know. They don't care. They don't have to an extent. So I think they will be fine. I want to see what happens in terms of... do they really want to keep the Nest branding long term, or is it just like something in the short term? Are they gonna make a Google thermostat? Are they gonna make Google branded sensors? I could see that happen, but also I could see why they want to keep the Nest branding for now.
I think people would maybe be less likely to purchase something if it had Google on it. At least some type of some consumers, don't trust Google, and maybe. I don't think it's Google tricking people, but they'd be more comfortable with the Nest brand. And same way, like I remember when Nest was purchased by Google, a bunch of people like in the Apple community were like, "Oh no, I'm taking my thermostat off my wall." It's like, well, that's a little extreme, but maybe there is something to it that the Nest brand has a level of trust built into it that maybe Google doesn't in the Cernet arena. I think there's probably something there.
Yeah. I'm really interested to see how they sort of the smart home portfolio by Google shakes out going forward, because they have these speakers that are also assistants, and they have the Chromecast, which can integrate with the assistant, and then they have Nest, and then they're also making phones. It seems like a sort of scattershot strategy, but also everything is sort of coming together under the Google Assistant banner, which is interesting because it's a very different approach from Apple, for example, where everything is either Siri or HomeKit, and then everything is up to the third parties to manufacture and sell, or not, as we'll see in a couple of minutes. Whereas Google is actually making these products themselves, but also working with third-party manufacturers, which is basically the Android strategy all over. They're making their own stuff, but also they're making it possible for others to integrate with it. And instead, Apple is sort of taking the opposite approach here. They're just making the framework, but they don't actually make any smart home product. It's a really, really interesting difference.
I think it is. So let's talk a little bit about that. 9 to 5 broke a story today on the home. So there's a page on Apple's website. It's like HomeKit devices, and you can go through there and sort by like, I'm looking for this sort of thing, I'm looking for that sort of thing. And on that list, up until recently, were some like doorbell cameras. So the August doorbell cam was listed as coming soon. It's now no longer there. Ring had said that they were looking into HomeKit support, but they have not said anything else about that. So that may be not coming anymore. I don't know. You've got a HomeKit camera, or you did. Do you still have that thing?
I have a couple.
Yeah.
Actually, I have what's the name? D-Link Omna, and I have a Logi Circle 2. I really like the Logi one. I remember HomeKit doorbells. I remember writing about it in my iOS 10 review. I think the situation with this product has always been kind of weird in that there was only one available on the market. And honestly, I don't know what the problem is here. It's a strange product in that it blends being a camera with also being an intercom type of device, and maybe they just couldn't get it to work reliably enough, and they just decided to pull the references from the web page because nobody is making them. So it sort of speaks to this is part of the old HomeKit approach by Apple of really slow certification times, a really slow approval process. Now, in theory, at WWDC this year, Apple committed to improving the HomeKit certification process to have it be done from several months to just a few weeks. And that goes alongside the improvements that they made last year with self-certification using software. You don't have to wait for Apple to license a HomeKit, compatible chip to put into your product. You can just make sure that your product supports the HomeKit software specification, and then you can certify with Apple. And now Apple is saying it doesn't take 3 months to certify with us. We're opening more certification labs around Europe and around the world, and it takes just a handful of weeks. Which is, it's not, a few weeks is not an immediate process. Still, 3 weeks is better than 3 or 4 months. And Apple has always prioritized stricter and more severe, security requirements than maybe other companies. And on one hand, that is a problem because if you go on Amazon, there's not the same variety of accessories that work with the Echo and accessories that work with HomeKit. And the situation with HomeKit is especially problematic outside of the United States, where if you go on the Italian Apple website, and I think it's mostly compatible in France and Germany and the UK even, we have 2 pages of accessories for HomeKit, and I think in the US you have 5, which basically says a lot. But still, on the other hand, I think I'm much more confident putting a HomeKit device into my apartment than putting something else. That's not to say that I haven't done it, because I used to have Amazon Echo devices. I used to have smart home devices from other companies. I'm not paranoid that way. But still, I'm pretty confident about HomeKit and the way that it works. And actually, I like the way that it works with the HomeKit integration and the Siri integration and the HomePod. It would be better if, I want to see if going forward, if what Apple said in June, it's still too early to tell and to judge if this new strategy is actually working well. But if it does, I suppose we're going to see more frequent HomeKit releases from third-party manufacturers. We're going to see more devices gaining, software updates that add HomeKit support. That would be nice.
Yeah.
The doorbell stuff, it seems to me as if it's a problem coming from the old strategy of Apple and HomeKit. And now they're probably rethinking how things are done here. They're probably rethinking the API. I don't know what's going on. But the fact that only one company was making a compatible doorbell with the camera and the intercom, I understand why. It's gone from the website.
Yeah, hopefully they get it sorted out. Ring was purchased by Amazon, so that may be a factor there. But that may never show up in HomeKit. But I hopefully someone gets there with it. I don't have one of these. I'm not particularly interested in one, I don't think. But like I said, I'm so far in the Nest world. My HomeKit stuff is all basically lights, and then all my cameras are Nest, and so I kind of have two different places I check stuff. But yeah, hopefully, like you said, this is kind of the last days of it being really difficult to move into HomeKit, and Apple's making it easier, and hopefully consumers are rewarded for that with more options.
Yeah, I agree.
Cool. I think that brings us to the end.
Yeah, we're done. Even without Michael, we can do a show.
Yeah. So if you want to find show notes this week, head over to the website relay.fm/connected/201 with us. You can get in touch with us there via email. You can find us on Twitter. Federico is at VITICCI and is the editor-in-chief of MacStories.net. You can find me on Twitter as ISMH, and I write at 512pixels.net. We'd like to thank our sponsors this week, Pingdom, Simple Contacts, and Timing. And until our next episode, Federico, say goodbye.
Arrivederci.
Adios.